Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel called Living in Hayward, Wisconsin, where we talk about all things real estate related and also just about living in Hayward. I'm Audrey Miller, I'm the broker owner of Northwest Wisconsin Realty Team, and today we're just going to talk a little bit about the second quarter update for 2026. So this is for the activity in Sawyer County in the first half of 2026. So if you're a seller and you're wondering what the market's doing, if you're a buyer and wondering if now is a good time to buy, stay tuned. We're going to dig into the data and then I'll give you a little bit of perspective on, small pieces of advice for if you're a buyer right now and if you're a seller right now in the market that we're experiencing right now in Hayward and the surrounding areas. As always, feel free to join, subscribe, like, share my channel. I love to connect with people if you're looking to buy or sell or just want general information about the area. Let me know and I'd be happy to help. So I've done these quarterly updates basically ever since I started my channel. So I try to stick with the same data points each time and the same geographic information and data. So this is going to be for residential, both on water and off water homes that sold in Sawyer County. Hayward is squarely in the middle of Sawyer County. Well, it's not in the middle. It's squarely in Sawyer County, and Sawyer County extends over to Winter, Wisconsin, and covers kind of some areas to the north, south, east, and west of Hayward. But that is the main area that I work in. I also work in Washburn County, but the statistics and price points there tend to mirror Sawyer County. So I'm just sticking with the Sawyer County data. So this is through the first half of 2026, and we're just going to do some comparing between 2025 and 2026 to give you a feel for the market trends and what is happening in the Hayward market in July of 2026. So first off, we'll talk about the homes that are actually available to purchase right now. Last year at this same time, there were 210 properties on the market that were available to purchase and had not been sold. Of those, 64 were actually under contract, which was about 30%. This year, we actually are down in inventory. We have only 178 homes that are available both on and off water, all price points, all acreages, 178 total. And of that, 48 of them are under contract. So that percentage is 27% of the available properties are under contract. So that's basically the same, 27% versus 30% last year. But the notable difference here is the decrease in the number of listings that are actually available. So that's something to take note of if you're a buyer out there searching. Inventory remains limited is how I would say it. The next metric will be how many sold year to date. And I actually have the data for 2024 on this also. So in 2024, in the first 6 months of the year, that was 134 properties sold. In 2025, that number was 127 properties. And this year, we are actually up 22% in sales and have sold 155 properties in that same amount of time. And keep in mind, not a whole heck of a lot sells in January, February, and March. So a lot of these sales are happening in April, May, and June when I'm giving this report at the end of the second quarter. So interestingly, we're up in sales, but down in inventory. So things are still selling pretty quickly. And you'll see that when we slide into the days on market data next, which is up from 103 days on market last year, incrementally increased to 108 days on market. As I've said before, this is from the time it actually comes on the market until it closes. So a good portion of that time is spent in the transaction process. If there's a lender involved, doing title work, all those kind of things, appraisal, inspections, if they're in the contract. So we went from 103 to 108 days average. So essentially properties are selling almost exactly at the same pace as they were last year. The average sale price, this one's always super interesting and one that both buyers and sellers are quite interested in. So this has been steadily increasing still to this day, even though we are past like the peak of the frenzy of the market in terms of days on market and in terms of everything selling in the first weekend like we had back in 2020, 2021, and even into 2022. The prices have continued to tick upward in the Hayward area. So we went from last year being at an average of $423,000 per property, and that includes on and off water, all price ranges, but that's the average, to going up to $448,000 this year. So that is about a 6% year over year. It's not huge, but year to date, and we'll have a fuller picture when we get to the end of 2026, but year to date compared to last year, we are up about 6% on price with an average sale price of $448,000. The average list versus sale price has remained almost static. We went from ratio of 95.7% of sale price versus list price to now 96.6%. So that's actually up just a little bit. the properties are selling close to the list price. Again, you got to keep in mind, this is the list price at the time that it went under contract. So sometimes there have been price drops before that. I wish there was a statistic that could show me what the original list price was versus the sale price, but our MLS does not track it that way. They only show what it was versus the list price at the time it went under contract. And then the other piece of information, people kind of know this is public information, but last year around this time, we were hanging around 7% interest rate. Now we're 6 to 6.5%. I've seen quite a few people getting loans under that 6.5%, depending on the criteria and the size of the loan and the person's credit and all of those factors. Interest rates are down a little bit. It's not really enough to move the needle for buyers, but it is trending slightly downward, but it's been hanging steady there. And that's a good word to describe the market in general, is steady. We have been in what I would call a steady market overall for a few years now. And there's always the buyers out there who are waiting for the crash. And I did a video back in 2025, I don't know if any of you remember, where I kind of predicted that I thought it was going to continue like it has, which is just a steady market. Places are selling pretty quickly. We're holding on days on market. Prices are actually still trending upward a little bit. So yeah, it's been a good market. It's been a steady market. And this would be my advice. If you're on the buyer side, if you like a property and you feel it's appropriately priced, you should not wait to put in an offer. Things are still selling quite quickly if they are priced appropriately and appeal to a large group of buyers. A lot of times still in the first weekend or week, quite often still with multiple offers. So this is not a slow-paced market. Now, there are certain cases for sure where buyers have a little more time to decide. There are definitely more instances of where there's just the one offer on the table that we're negotiating with, but multiple offers, I think, are happening still around 50% of the time. That would be my guess. I don't have the specific tracking on that, but just from my daily experience in the market, that's what I would say. So it's not a wait around and see kind of market unless you're either not a very motivated buyer or you don't feel that the value of the home matches what the seller is asking, and then you might sit back and watch to see if there's a price drop coming up. And for sellers, my main advice would be that we are in a market where you need to price appropriately, not low, not high, but if you're gonna err on one side or the other, when your agent presents you with the comparable sales, and if you've got some solid comparable properties to look at, it'd be best to stay on the lower end of that, because the properties that are selling really quickly and for the best prices are the ones that buyers feel bring the best value to the market. The economic and political climate and all that, I feel, has made both buyers and sellers a little bit more cautious or, thoughtful than they were a couple of years ago. Sellers from the aspect of they're trying to get the most for their property, buyers from the aspect of they're very value driven and want to make sure that they're getting a good investment or spending what they feel is the right amount of money for a property. So there's a little bit of a disconnect right now between what sellers think their property is worth and what buyers are willing to pay. And especially when sellers go on the high end of the comps, then buyers are just sitting and watching, and they're snatching up the properties that are appropriately priced. So this is a little bit more of a gap than what I've seen in recent years. So what you're seeing a lot of is that sellers are ending up dropping their price a time or two to finally get to where the buyers are interested. So if you're a seller, you need to be very careful about the timing of that. If you want to stretch a little more on price and test the market, so to speak, it's not the strategy that I necessarily recommend. I don't think it works the best, but it's your prerogative. I would just say that if the market tells you in the form of not getting many showings in the first couple of weeks, no offers, you only can give it 2 to 4 weeks before you make an adjustment, in my opinion, if you don't want to hurt your property by having it become stale on the market by the time it reaches 60 or 75 days. So a reassessment of where it's at and what the market is telling you at 3 weeks to 4 weeks would be ideal. If you're getting a lot of showings but no offers, this is my rule of thumb for the current market, you're probably about 5% high on price. If you're getting very little showings at all and any feedback that the price is too high, you're probably closer to 10% high on price. So those are just my rule of thumbs from what I've observed. Yeah, so it's a good time to be buying. It's a good time to be selling. It's a good time to be in the Hayward area. We're having quite a lot of people, it feels, moving to the Hayward area permanently, choosing to work from home and living in our beautiful Northwoods. So it feels like Hayward is kind of a happening place right now and experiencing some growth, which is very exciting. So as always, feel free to reach out if you have questions about this video or any others. And I'm Audrey Miller, and thanks for spending your time with me.